guest today is the Alderman of the 42nd Ward. His career in public service began shortly after graduating from New York's Hobart College in 1994. In 1995, our guest today went to work for Speaker Michael Madigan as a policy analyst and as communications director. Following his nearly 7 years in state government, he was tapped by AT&T to serve as Midwest Vice President of Public Affairs, AT&T's youngest regional vice president. Our guest today has emerged as a member of a new generation of Chicago's reform leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the City Club of Chicago, the Alderman of the 42nd Ward, Brendan Reilly. Alderman.
Thank you, and actually I'd be remiss if I did not recognize one more person here today, my chief fundraiser and far more importantly, the love of my life, Kristen Donnells. Please stand up. Thank you, and good afternoon. I'm truly honored to have been invited back to the City Club. As you know, after 5 weeks in office in 2007, Jay was kind enough to invite me here to outline my priorities for the 42nd Ward and share with you my philosophy on local government. I'm especially pleased to be back because it means I must not have laid too big of an egg during my last presentation. Either way, it's hard to believe that 14 months have passed since I last spoke before this audience. To be honest, it feels more like it's been about 10 years. As I was preparing for today's presentation, just for kicks, I reread the comments that I delivered from this very podium during our last visit. At that time, I had just 5 short weeks of aldermanic experience under my belt, and to be frank, when writing last year's speech, I had a hard time deciding how on earth I was going to fill my time allotment. Knowing that few people were familiar with my background, I chose to dedicate most of that speech to describing my work experience, dispelling some misperceptions related to my agenda, and I decided to use the rest of that, the balance of my time, to discuss my philosophy on the role of government and to outline some priorities and goals for the 42nd Ward. I thought it would be interesting to read a few excerpts from last year's speech to provide some context in relation to the work I've been doing over the past 18 months as the new downtown alderman. And here are some interesting outtakes from last year's talk, and I quote, "My hope is that a year from now, everyone in this room will think of me as a hard-working, knowledgeable authority on the issues and a strong advocate for the 42nd Ward and the principles of good city government. I am committed to bringing honesty, integrity, and accessibility to the Chicago City Council, and I intend to make these ideals the hallmarks of my public service." During that speech, I went on to outline 5 goals and priorities in my first term as alderman. First and foremost, promoting balanced and responsible development in downtown Chicago. At the time, I said, quote, "I wanted to ensure the city's urban planning process strikes the delicate balance between the needs of property owners and developers, while ensuring our downtown neighborhoods are the most desirable to live in for many years to come." The second point that I made was to improve transportation policies, to support and enhance our public transit system, and to work towards initiatives that reduce traffic congestion and improve pedestrian safety. The third point, identify efficiencies in city government. Determine how city government can deliver better basic services to keep our neighborhoods attractive places to live and work, particularly when it comes to cleaning streets and alleys, removing refuse, and servicing malfunctioning city infrastructure. 4, team with the police department to improve the quality of life. Work with the Chicago Police Department to improve the security of downtown residents and businesses while developing creative new solutions to address the quality of life concerns and to keep our neighborhoods safe. 5, work with the Park District to preserve green space. Partner with the Chicago Park District to maintain and preserve our precious downtown green space, improving our local parks and creating new open space in the downtown area whenever possible. Those were my comments to you last year, and perhaps with the exception of my goal to preserve open green space wherever possible, I believe we've been making excellent progress in each of these key subject areas. Thank you, Bert. In fact, unlike last year, my preparation for today's address was quite different. Rather than struggle to find the appropriate subject matter to fill up my allotted time, this year was actually an exercise in deciding how much I could cram into this presentation and what would have to be omitted in order to avoid cutting into your dinner hour. My point is, I guess, that during my 18-month tenure as Alderman of the 42nd Ward, it's been filled to the brim with complex issues, problems to solve, consensus to build, and unique challenges, and even just a little bit of controversy. That said, I'd like to dive into some of the higher profile issues that I've been tackling during my first term in office. And that brings us to the Lakeshore Athletic Club. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Lakeshire Athletic Club is located at 850 North Lakeshore Drive. It's an historic building designed by Jarvis Hunt. It was constructed in 1927. And when I first took office, I inherited a looming demolition deadline. Already 5 weeks had passed on that clock, and we were nearing the possibility of seeing that structure being torn down. There was a developer who was interested in redeveloping that site for luxury condominiums, and I gave that proposal very serious consideration. After spending countless hours through a community process, listening to experts, architects, historic preservationists, consultants, other developers, the list goes on, it became very clear to me that this was a building that was worth trying to save. I took some criticism from some real estate experts who said it would be virtually impossible to save this building in an economically viable way. I disagreed with that supposition and worked very hard to try and find a way to preserve the structure. I'm very pleased to announce that we were able to save that building. It will now be redeveloped to provide for senior luxury residential housing as well as an assisted living facility within the existing structure. I consider this creative use as a true win-win scenario for the neighborhood, the university, and the entire city, saving an historic lakefront building, ensuring just compensation for Northwestern University, offering senior living opportunities in the neighborhood, and putting a vacant property back on the city tax rolls for the first time in decades. This project was my first taste of the historic preservation experience since I've taken this office. I'm pleased to report that we have initiated landmark proceedings to protect several other important structures throughout the 42nd Ward. Those include the IBM building, Germania Club, the Village Theater, and the Marina City Complex. That helped frame and helped me refine the guiding principles that I apply to the planned development process and the review of real estate development projects throughout the 42nd Ward. When I ran as a candidate, I promised a fair and open and transparent process, a deliberative process where I would listen to all sides involved in the issue and sort through those the best I could. I also made a commitment to do my homework. Admittedly, I came to this job with not even a fraction of the experience and knowledge that my predecessor had with regard to zoning and land use policy. So this very first project, the Lakeshore Athletic Club, helped me. It dropped me into that deep end of the swimming pool and forced me really to think about how we were going to manage this process. You probably haven't read about the many dozens of projects that I've approved over the last 18 months during my tenure. Those projects aren't controversial enough to warrant a headline in the Chicago Tribune or the Chicago Sun-Times. But I'll give you a sample, just a small sample of a couple of the higher profile projects that we've approved over the past 18 months. One that I'm particularly proud of, and we just recently passed this, was the Heinz development site located at 444 West Lake Street. This is a redevelopment over railroad tracks, a pretty nasty blighted area at the branch of the Chicago River where the river splits north and south. And this project, with the assistance of some TIF funding, will provide for a 1.5-acre public park and the construction of a Riverwalk extension. This will be, I think, a tremendous asset for downtown Chicago and the city as a whole. Further, we also recently approved some additional public funding to support the completion of Block 37. I could probably spend an entire luncheon talking about the trials and tribulations of that project. I can tell you that Freed has done a tremendous job seeing that project through, and I think with this additional assistance, we're going to see a wonderful project completed very soon. We also, just nearby here in the general neighborhood, one of my first projects was approving the John Buck project plan for 505 North State. They're currently under construction, and I think it'll be a beautiful addition to the near north neighborhood. You probably didn't read about this one, but I'm surprised you didn't. The Waldorf Astoria project, located just north of the Sheraton Hotel. This is a 107-story building that will be constructed starting next year. It didn't get a headline somehow. The Esquire Theater redevelopment. This is another issue that fell into my lap very early on in my first term. Esquire Theater is located on Oak Street. Oak Street is widely recognized as one of the city's most successful retail destinations. It's a very important corridor, I think, moving off of the northern portion of Michigan Avenue. These are some of our highest-end businesses, and they generate a tremendous amount of tourism traffic and commerce in the area. The Esquire Theater is located on the north side of Oak Street, about mid-block, and for various reasons, the theater was no longer economically viable. The owners of that property tried not once but twice to reopen this theater and make it a success. I don't think anyone's happy to see that beautiful theater go, but we have to. It's time to finally plug this hole mid-block on Oak Street. The first project that was proposed to replace that theater was for a mid-rise hotel in the middle of the block. I gave that very careful consideration. It received mixed reviews from the neighborhood, and I really wanted to make sure that if we were going to approve that project, it would fit properly on that block. After a significant amount of time studying the issue and talking with transportation experts, it became clear to me that by putting this hotel in the middle of the block, we would be posing an additional stress on the local infrastructure, the alley system, and I was not convinced that we could get the loading to work properly on that street. So we rejected that proposal. I'm very proud to announce the developer has re-engineered plans for that site and will be approving the construction. We have approved the construction of 2- and 3-story retail boutique shops in line with the rest of the block, and I think it's totally in character with that neighborhood, and we've been getting rave reviews from the local residents and businesses on that decision. Many other projects have come across our desk, and we're not controversial to make those enough to make those headlines, and I won't bore you with a laundry list, but there are dozens more. But perhaps the best example of the approach we've taken to promoting responsible development in the 42nd Ward can be found in the negotiation over the Children's Memorial Hospital's relocation to Streeterville. I spent much of last year participating in dozens of community meetings, design presentations, and briefings conducted by the various parties and stakeholders who would be impacted by the construction of the new hospital. I made an extra effort to ensure that I fully appreciated all concerns related to this project. Throughout this transparent community process, I worked very closely with the hospital, the neighborhood association SOAR, and local condominium associations, as well as the Department of Transportation, the Office of Emergency Management and Communication, and the Department of Planning and Development, to review all of the outstanding issues related to traffic congestion, pedestrian safety, and parking. Once we identified those outstanding issues regarding this complex project, I condensed those concerns into a 4-page memorandum of unresolved issues. I reviewed this memo with the hospital, neighborhood representatives, as well as all of the appropriate city departments to ensure that we all agreed upon the critical issues that had to be addressed and to confirm that I had established a reasonable and proper framework for our negotiations regarding that project. During that deliberative process, I personally spent well over 100 hours negotiating this project with the attorneys representing Children's Memorial Hospital, Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Northwestern University, and representatives from CDOT, OEMC, and the Department of Planning. During those meetings, I worked to specifically address each of the key sticking points contained in that 4-page memo by identifying creative solutions to mitigate the major infrastructure challenges that this project presented to us. After many months of intense negotiations, we were able to secure ironclad commitments from Northwestern University and Children's Memorial Hospital to provide a number of key remedies that will properly address significant traffic congestion, pedestrian safety, and parking-related issues within the medical campus plan development boundaries. I'll give you a snapshot of what some of those great concessions were. A traffic management plan. The medical institutions agreed to file a traffic management plan, also called a TMP, modeled upon the very successful McCormick Place TMP. This will serve as a living, breathing document. The TMP will be reviewed annually by my office and the attendant city departments and will be updated to mitigate traffic impacts in the medical campus. The plan must be submitted to the city concurrent with Part 2 review of the hospital project, and it must contain operational, planning, and funding components. We also negotiated traffic control aids. As a result of our negotiations, we secured a commitment by the medical institutions to reimburse the city for full-time traffic control aids to help address congestion issues related to the addition of Children's Memorial Hospital to the Streeterville neighborhood. Our agreement resulted in six traffic control aids being deployed in the immediate neighborhood during the construction phase, and an additional 6 aids for a total of 12 once the new hospital is opened. TCAs will be detailed to manage failing intersections, and teams of roving TCAs will be tasked with enforcing city ordinance, towing double-parked cars, enforcing loading and tow zones, and cracking down on idling buses. We also implemented parking requirements. When this plan was first presented, it did not include any additional parking to serve visitors and medical staff. During our negotiations, we secured a firm commitment from the hospital to construct 1,100 new parking spaces to serve the facility. The hospital is required to notify the Department of Planning of the location of the new parking facilities no later than March 2009. Countdown and pedestrian signals. We also secured an agreement from the medical institutions to fund the conversion of campus crosswalk signals to state-of-the-art countdown signals to help improve pedestrian safety and improve traffic flow throughout the neighborhood. If future reviews determine additional traffic signals or signs are required, the institutions have agreed to partner with the city in handling those costs. Valet parking. In addition, the hospital agreed to utilize valet parking on an emergency basis for persons with disabilities only and restricted to drop-offs at the facility. Patrons will be required to pick up their keys at the hospital lobby and walk across the street to the Superior Street Garage to retrieve their vehicles. We are told by city traffic engineers this will significantly reduce congestion in the area proximate to the new facility. Modal split reports and private transit options must be identified. The institutions will be required to continue to produce a modal split transit outreach report to the City of Chicago every 3 years, describing how visitors reach their facilities within the planned development area and what percentages of visitors reach their facilities by means other than private single-occupied passenger vehicles. Perhaps the most difficult portion of the negotiation process for this project was related to the proposed medical helipad facility for Children's Memorial Hospital. It is important that you understand the challenges we faced in negotiating this very sensitive issue. Since day one, I have maintained that it is critically important that the helipad facility not pose a risk to public safety, and that we must ensure that the facility would be safe for the critically ill children being transported by helicopter and the medical staff on board. Under the current approval framework, it's the Illinois Department of Transportation who is the final arbiter of helipad safety. The state will host a public administrative hearing in Streeterville in the coming months to ensure that all interested parties have the opportunity to engage experts, provide testimony, and offer their input regarding safety issues. My office will closely monitor these proceedings to ensure an open and transparent public process. I believe we secured many creative and comprehensive solutions to these complex infrastructure issues related to the Children's Memorial Hospital project. I am very proud of the unprecedented public benefits that were secured to ensure the hospital will be a better fit for the neighborhood and a wonderful success for the children that they serve. I am very grateful to CEO Patrick Magoon and his talented team at Children's Memorial Hospital and the other fine institutions within the medical campus, to the neighborhood representatives and professionals at the city who supported our negotiations every step of the way, providing critical input and valuable suggestions on how to make this important project a reality. I'm very proud of how this has worked out. I can tell you, the one last issue, Unresolved aside, everyone believes that this was a fine example of how a public process should work. We were able to bridge the gap between neighborhood residents and the institution, and I think everyone involved is very, very pleased with the final product. In addition to promoting responsible development, I have also been working with Mayor Reilly on some wonderful new initiatives to help enhance downtown Chicago's draw as a national and international tourist destination. We're currently working on designing a streetscape design plan for South Michigan Avenue, south of the Chicago River, to Randolph Street, to better connect the wildly successful North Michigan Avenue Mag Mile to Millennium Park, one of this city's most successful tourism draws in many, many years. We'll be unveiling some plans for that project in the next several months, and you'll likely read about those in the newspaper. We're also working with the Chicago Park District and the Mayor's Office on the development of Dusable Park near Navy Pier. This project will be developed in conjunction with the Chicago Spire, and it's my hope that we'll get that project done within the next 4 or 5 years. We're also working with the Park District on the planning for the new Gateway Harbor expansion proposal. The Park District, Navy Pier, McCormick Place, the Mayor's Office, and my office will be coordinating very closely to ensure that that project is a shining success. There are many other projects that we'll be announcing in the coming months. Certainly, I'm working as a partner with Mayor Reilly in helping to promote the City of Chicago's 2016 Olympic bid. And one of the projects I'm most excited about is the work we're doing on the Chicago River. The Chicago Riverwalk project is an ambitious project. I'm very excited to be working with Mayor Reilly, the Park District, and members of the Riverwalk business community to improve the newly expanded Riverwalk. It is my hope that in the near future, the new Riverwalk will draw from Millennium Park's recent success as the #1 tourism destination on Independence Day weekend for the 3rd year in a row. I see tremendous opportunities to make the Riverwalk one of Chicago's top tourist destinations. The Chicago River is very much a working river. More than 2 million tons of cargo is shipped on those waters each year. In addition to industrial shipping, the Chicago River is also home to a diverse range of uses, from pleasure boating, water taxi services, to architectural tour boats, canoeing, and kayaking. And today, thanks to Mayor Reilly, the Chicago Park District, and our local business leaders, we are launching a new program that will deliver a great mix of new cultural, culinary, and tourist attractions to a reinvigorated Chicago Riverwalk. I look forward to partnering with Mayor Reilly and the Park District and area businesses over the coming months to establish new public-private partnerships to further develop and expand this Riverwalk by extending contiguous pathways under our downtown bridge systems and creating new opportunities for new public open space, cultural attractions, and tourist destinations along the river. Another very important issue in the 42nd Ward, this is a rapidly growing mixed-use district with many new residents flooding into the neighborhoods on a daily basis. We have a strong need for public schools. Some of you may be surprised to learn that the 42nd Ward is home to only one Chicago public school, the Ogden School. Ogden is a tremendous learning institution that is a shining star and certainly under the expert guidance of Principal Ken Starl. We are currently working with the Public Building Commission and the Chicago Public Schools on plans for the construction of a brand new Ogden School at its current location at Dearborn and Walton. This project is scheduled to be delivered by fall of 2011. Certainly one school is not enough to serve the rapidly growing residential population of downtown Chicago. The Lakeshore East Plan development, the PD governing what is commonly referred to as the New East Side, also requires the construction of a public school on or adjacent to Lakeshore Park. Initially, this school was contemplated to serve as a K-4 facility. However, Mayor Reilly and Chicago Public Schools have concluded, and I would say rightly so, that Chicago would be better served by constructing a K-8 facility. We are currently working with the developer, Magellan, and the Chicago Public Schools to identify the most appropriate location for that facility. We still have more work to do, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the Chicago Public Schools in the coming weeks to discuss our next steps. Public transit is also a critical issue impacting the 42nd Ward. We are on the receiving end of your daily commute, and therefore we have a keen interest in making sure that public transportation systems are solvent and run efficiently. I'd like to applaud Ron Huberman for the yeoman's work he's been doing under very difficult circumstances and trying budget times in running the CTA. I am actually looking forward to going on a tour of the downtown infrastructure with Mr. Huberman in the next week. But he's come up with some very exciting new initiatives, some pilot programs, and I'm hoping, God willing, if we land that Chicago Olympics bid, we'll have some federal dollars to broaden and expand those programs. We will be rolling out a rapid bus transit pilot program on a number of key routes throughout downtown Chicago. Here in the 42nd Ward, there will be a route established on Chicago Avenue. We're very excited about the recent completion of the new Brown Line station at Chicago and Franklin. As you know, just blocks away, we're constructing a new State and Grand Red Line stop. It will be state-of-the-art in a beautiful facility. We're working with the CTA to help fund the maintenance and repair of the aging railroad ties and tracks on the Loop Transit system. We're continuing to promote car sharing through not-for-profit organizations like IGO with every new plan development that I approve. We're also going to be working to expand the downtown network of bicycle lanes. Mayor Daley is absolutely correct. We need to get more people riding their bicycles to and from work. That said, we also need to get our friends in the messenger service to behave themselves and stop playing slalom games on our city streets. Very excited about the opportunities that we have to improve our public transit system. I do believe sincerely that if we are fortunate enough to land the Olympic bid next fall, the floodgates will open and we will have some capital to work with. To those of my colleagues and friends here from the state legislature, Senator Raoul, Senator Duncan, Will Burns, my Democratic nominee, Democrat-elect, they all touch this ward. They've all communicated to me that it'll be a priority for them in working to pass a capital plan in Springfield, something that is sorely needed in order to fund these important projects. That brings me to my last subject, the 2008 city budget. To give you we're not going to talk about Grant Park today. Sorry, Paul. Last fall, I participated in my first city council budget process, and as you know, the mayor's budget called for more than $275 million in corresponding increases in city fines, taxes, and fees, including a substantial increase in local property taxes. As members of the City Council, I believe that we have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Chicago to ensure city government is operating within its means. I made the tough decision last year to vote against the 2008 city budget and the associated tax increases because I did not believe the City Council had done all that it could to identify additional savings, cuts, and efficiencies to help close that budget gap before turning to the taxpayers and asking them for more. I could not ask my constituents to pay millions of dollars in new taxes while knowing full well that we had not exhausted every effort to find additional efficiencies in our budget. Like many people, I believe Chicago has truly prospered under Mayor Daley's leadership. Long before Mr. Daley was elected mayor, most taxpayers have felt that the city government could operate more efficiently by eliminating waste and increasing accountability in our city departments. During last year's budget hearings, very little time was spent exploring possible budget cuts, delaying the filling of vacant positions, consolidating city departments, or postponing program expansions. I believe that I had a responsibility to my constituents to try and squeeze every penny of efficiency out of that budget before asking for more. In my view, that city budget fell short. This year, however, is a very different story. The mayor's 2009 budget proposal, I think, adheres to some very sound budget principles for municipal government. I understand that the mayor has a very difficult responsibility in having to frame his outline to frame the debate around how we're going to balance next year's budget. I don't envy that task. We have a $480 million budget deficit. It must be filled. Our revenue options are near exhausted. And the mayor, I think, has done a very responsible thing by presenting to the city of Chicago an austere budget that includes substantial cuts, reductions in vacancies, and the consolidation of key city departments that have overlapping responsibilities. I think this is a responsible budget. And I think it's very easy for people to take pot shots at a budget proposal, but my colleagues need to focus their attention on being part of the solution. It's very easy to sit back and armchair quarterback. I believe it is our responsibility to offer our own creative suggestions and to work cooperatively with Mayor Daley to get this hard work done. No one on the City Council is relishing the idea of having to lay off hardworking city employees. These are human beings. They have families. They have mortgages to pay, financial obligations. This is not something that anyone is looking forward to do. Further, we're also having to consider some very difficult reductions in services. Again, not a single one of the aldermen on the City Council is eager to announce reductions in city services, delayed services when constituents are requesting them, and the inability to expand successful programs. All of these things are very unfortunate, but they reflect an economic climate that is not unique to the city of Chicago. This is indeed a global issue, and we are not the only municipality struggling to balance its budget. In addition to the reforms and the ideas that Mayor Daley has put forth on the table with regard to framing the 2009 budget discussion, I'm looking forward to working with the administration and my colleagues to explore some additional creative approaches to find additional savings. I think we should take a look at exploring fleet reduction, the city's fleet of vehicles, through strategic alliances with not-for-profit car-sharing programs like IGO, allowing employees to reserve vehicles during the workday, and during the times that those aren't reserved, allowing those to be used by the general public. This is a wonderful way to take thousands of vehicles off of the city streets, also putting to rest an aging vehicle fleet that costs millions of dollars to maintain and repair. Several of my colleagues have discussed the possibility of creating inspector general positions in each of the city departments to help the administration eliminate waste and weed out those bad apples that give many city employees a bad name. I happen to believe this added accountability could help us find additional savings and efficiencies and root out that waste that people continue to talk about when they talk about Chicago's city budget. I think that's worthy of discussion. Certainly those are headcount that would be new, and those would require funding sources, but I think the potential savings could be exponential compared to that expenditure. That said, I have to tell you, it's been a very eventful 18 months in office. It's not quite what I expected, and certainly I didn't plan to spend, Paul, so much time on the front page of the newspaper about Grant Park. That wasn't part of the strategy coming into office. In fact, you find this ironic. My strategy for the first year in office was to keep a low profile, keep my head down, nose to the grindstone, and stay out of the media. Well, I failed miserably. But truly, this is a rewarding job. I can see why my predecessor, Alderman Nateris, loved it so much. It provides you with a unique opportunity to help people on a day-to-day basis. It allows you to tackle some of the biggest problems facing the city of Chicago. And I have to say, I believe that 42nd Ward is by far the greatest mixed-use community in the entire United States. Thank you very much for having me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Bring the questions to the front. And by the way, Alderman, watch this. There goes my question right down the drain. So, Teresa, why don't you help out? It looks like our guys are once again taking a breather. Could you pass through the audience and get the questions from everybody? Raise your hand if you have a question. I'll read them. And go ahead, Teresa. You can do it. Where are they? Where are they? They left. There they are. Well, good thing you weren't Paul Revere. Okay, here we go. Michael, that was for you. I'll skip that one. Okay, this is a good one. Biff. Where's Biff? All right, Biff. Atlas Partners. Which is the proper role of an alderman? Response to a neighborhood residents and follow their wishes, or provide leadership for what is best, even if the direction is contrary to the residents and a possible NIMBY attitude. For all you political theorists, this is the age-old question. Are you a representative or an agent? Edmund Burke. Go ahead. You can use either one of those.
Thank you, Paul. Well, that's really the trick of this job. It's a very delicate balancing act, as I mentioned during my presentation. And it's my job to sort through all of the controversy, the competing opinions, and do what I was elected to do, and that is to make the very best decision that I can for the community as a whole. The suggestion that there may be NIMBY interest, not in my backyard interests, that could hijack a process, I can appreciate that. However, I think we've done a pretty good job sorting through those sorts of issues. I can tell you there have been a number of projects that I've approved over the last 18 months that were not roundly endorsed, and people were not jumping up and down in the streets about those projects. One in particular, the Waldorf Astoria project, a 107-story structure with a substantial impact on Streeterville. There were a number of people who were very disappointed in my decision to approve that. However, after listening to those local concerns, on balance with what is best for the future of downtown Chicago, I determined it was most appropriate to proceed with that project, and it received my approval. Another example, I think, would probably be the Heinz development site at the fork of the Chicago River. That was a contentious issue as well, and there still are a number of local residents that are very displeased with my decision to proceed. But that said, each of these projects was improved dramatically thanks to having a very rigorous public process. We were able to make significant adjustments, and I would argue improvements, to each of the projects. And every single one looks very different today than it did when it was first brought before me for review. So I think that shows that our process is working, and it's working very well. That said, I've rejected 4 or 5 projects out of the many dozens that I've reviewed this year, and I think you could count them on one hand. And that was because I believed, after all of this thorough review and investigation, that those were not appropriate, either because they were out of character with the neighborhood or they weren't a compatible use in that immediate area. But even when we've rejected those projects, I've worked directly with the development teams to help them craft more appropriate plans. And I think, made an extra effort to be as receptive and responsive as I can be.
From Ralph Connor, Heartland Institute. What about TIF district money for homeowners, like Assessor Houlihan said, about $600 million in TIFs? We will leave out the last phrase. What about that?
Oh, yeah, we should leave that last phrase out, shouldn't we, Paul? To be honest, I haven't had a chance to carefully review the assessor's proposal. I certainly applaud him for trying to find creative new ways to provide much-needed relief to homeowners. These are terrible times. In many cases, people are carrying mortgages that are worth substantially more than the property that they own. I don't know that rating TIF funds is legal. I'd have to check on that with some of our lawyers down in Springfield. I understand that the TIF districts, in many people's minds, are too prolific in the city of Chicago. People suggest that those TIF districts divert much-needed funds from the Chicago public schools and county government and others. That may or may not be the case. I can tell you that when it comes to allocating TIF district funds in the central business district, we're very careful to review those proposals and make sure that that is money well spent. TIF districts should not be used as personal pocketbooks for pet projects. I think when used appropriately, they are a tremendous tool that helps keep the city of Chicago competitive with many of the other cities that we're competing with for corporate headquarters, for new jobs, new tourism attractions, hotels. These are things that the city needs in order to continue to grow and thrive. So I think painting TIFs with a broad brush would be inappropriate. I think it's more important to look how each individual allocation is appropriated and the reasoning behind it.
If you have a question, just put it up in the air and we'll come and pick it up. A little shorter answers, Alderman. We're going to have to cut off your mic. Okay. I remember those days. This is from Florence Castro, non-member. Well, Florence, if you want your question ever asked again, you better become a member. How are existing construction projects in the 42nd Ward impacted by the economic downturn, especially those that have plans but have not broken ground yet?
Again, back to the capital crunch and the struggling economy. Many of the projects that were approved in the 42nd Ward by my predecessor, Alderman Terrace, are moving forward just fine. There are a few that have encountered some difficulties. I don't want to call those folks out specifically, but there are a couple of projects, hotel projects in the Loop area. There are some residential condominium high-rise projects that are slowing down. They haven't stopped entirely, but they've had to slow down to adjust to the market conditions. We are seeing fewer projects coming across my desk for review, and I can tell you that the nature of those projects has changed. When I first took office, it was a full array of real estate proposals: commercial development, luxury condominium development, mid-range condominium development, apartments and hotels. Today, the vast majority of projects that we're reviewing now are hotel, commercial, or a mix of both. It seems that those are the areas where people are still able to scrape together financing. I fully anticipate that once we get through the next year or so, and hopefully the feds are able to get the money to where it needs to be and the banks will start lending again, we can get back to the task of building downtown Chicago. I fully appreciate that encouraging new growth and development is critical to the city's economy, and we need to get that activity chugging again.
Great. I have two questions left. Remember, you got people, this is very important, you got the guy up here. Since he's taken one off the table, I mean, I understand there are a lot of questions.
I'm happy to answer questions.
Well, I don't want, no, that's okay, that's okay. The professor had a couple of sandbaggers, but that's all right. Oh, due time. This is from Joy Saxon, City Club board member. The soccer field in Lincoln Park. What was the resolution with Latin School?
Okay.
Maybe a softball.
Yeah, it's close. Yes, and that's correct. The questions related to the Latin School's soccer field deal in Lincoln Park that received some press attention earlier in the year, concurrent with the controversy over Grant Park. Worth mentioning, Latin School is in the 42nd Ward, Lincoln Park is in the 43rd Ward, and Alderman Daly's not here, so she's down at the budget hearings. My biggest issue with that project was process. I'm not going to stand here and speak to the merits of the proposal. Just as many people who disagreed with that project, there are just as many who thought it was a wonderful idea. That's outside the boundaries of my ward, and I defer to Alderman Daly's judgment on that project. I'm not purely passing the buck. I think that the process was sloppy. I think the taxpayers were deserving of a more open process, a more deliberative process, and unfortunately that didn't happen in this particular case. Where it stands today, the Park District went back and administered a public process. They went through all of the necessary public steps that they had to in order to approve it. They did subsequently approve the project. It is being constructed. And I know that there are local homeowners that are considering litigation who would like to see the field removed. But that's as much as I can report on that particular issue.
Good answer, Alderman. Remember, coming up is that magic word, redistricting. Just keep that in mind. All right, this is from Barbara Olson. Can you comment on the amount of money in the city budget for PR purposes? Well, I thought I'd leave them to the end, all the ones that are, the groaners.
No, I can't. So, no, bad answer.
Well, you learned a lot in that short period of time.
I won't go into a lot of detail. I mean, I think I've read what everyone else has in the newspapers. I think those numbers can be misleading. Having been in public relations field myself for a number of years, sometimes those numbers are inflated because these agencies are actually passing through advertising dollars to the television stations to put advertising on the air. So sometimes if you see a $4 or $5 million ticket attached to a particular consulting firm, if you dig a little deeper, you'll see the vast majority of that money is actually passed directly through to the television stations to air those ads. That said, I think the city should consider spending significantly less money on public relations. If we're talking about eliminating 1,000 jobs at least, we shouldn't be spending hand over fist public relations dollars. I think the best public relations the City of Chicago can do is balance this budget effectively. With these cuts, still maintain a high level of service. I think that is good public relations for the City of Chicago.
Last questions from Alderman Nataras. Do you think we can build a park at the post office site?
Yes, and thank you for the question, Alderman. I certainly hope so. We have just gone through, and this is the Fort Dearborn post office facility just down the street here. The U.S. Postal Service over the past 2 years has been working to sell off some of its higher-priced real estate inventory to help them better manage their budgets. And one of the parcels that they identified for bid was this particular parcel. This has actually been contemplated, as you know, Alderman Nataras, in the City of Chicago's Central Area Plan. I think it would be a brilliant thing for the city to be able to develop the majority of that site as public park space. Obviously, that comes with a significant financial cost, and that's why it will require a developer to assist with that. This will not be entirely pristine green space. This will not be cheap to do. But there is a bidder who has made it through, prevailed in that process. A lot of work needs to be done over the next couple of years with the U.S. Postal Service to figure out what is the art of possibility. What can we or can't we do to get all of the land swapped and in place to develop a park? But to your question, Alderman, I think it would be a wonderful amenity for downtown Chicago. We deserve more green space per capita. We still have more work to do in that regard. So I'm very hopeful that we can get that accomplished in the next few years.
How about a nice round of applause?